I've got to trust the process, to be fair. The people on the panel, you kind of, I think there's 5, so you've just got to go with their decision, to be fair. It's frustrating because from my point of view, I'm the coach, I'm the manager, I'm recruiting the players, and I think the player can come in and do a job for Livingston. I wouldn't be spending money on a player that I think's not going to play for me, if that makes sense. With Tato, we had a wee bit of foresight in terms of we watched him train for a week up close and personal. We seen him play with our own eyes in a couple of games over in Africa. And he's been over now. That's him being in with us for about 4 weeks now, and he's been brilliant for us. So it was disappointing not to get the permit, but listen, I've got to trust the process, and I've got to trust how we do things in Scotland and take it in the chin and move on. And I think for Tato's development now, we'll need to look at reloading them back to Africa. South Africa probably, but maybe Africa in general.
So you've signed them?
Yeah, you can sign them, you can't legally pay the player, so for that to happen you've got to probably put him back out and loan himself to a country that he's eligible to play in, who will then take his wages. Does that make sense? So in January we need a change of circumstances. There's various ways for each change in circumstances to happen. His points tally needs to change. He's obviously not going to automatically qualify, but his point tally needs to change, so he needs to be playing top flight football in a top tier somewhere in Africa, preferably South Africa. There's a very high probability he's going to get a call up to South African 23s, which then leads to a change in circumstances and we can reapply in January. But we've invested in the player, spent a lot of money in bringing the player over here, getting his English language test, doing a lot of different hurdles you've got to do, and then get your GB. So frustrating, but that's the system and that's what we've got to work with, and it's the same for every other club, so I'm not going to sit here with a pated lip about it. If I could find a 20-year-old kid that I could afford, now that's the big one, that I can afford, that can bring to the team what Tato can bring to the team, I would snap your hands off right now. One, I've not got all the accommodation and travel costs. 2, you've not got any work permit issues, so there's no associated costs with that. So if I felt there was a 20-year-old kid in Scotland, 19, 20, 18, whatever that may be, that could make an impact in my first team that I could afford, I would go out there and do it in a heartbeat. But unfortunately, I've not got the finances to do that. 2 teams that between both boxes defended their areas very, very well, a very physical, aggressive game. Quite direct at times, but that wasn't because of the style of play. I would probably more lend itself towards both teams going in a high press and forcing the opponent long, opposed to both teams going out to try and play long and direct. So it was a good game of football, and I felt at the time probably a result. The draw is probably a fair reflection of the game, but we could have nicked it ourselves. But wasn't a lot in the game, but huge positives with the clean sheet to take into the next game. Hopefully goals. Dan's going to give us that explosion that I think we were just lacking in the final third. They can stretch games. Got us some, wee Brucey can do that, but Dan does it in a kind of different area of the park. He's naturally footed right winger. He can play in the left. He's got good aerial ability. He's got good assists. His data's actually quite good. So he can play in a number of positions for us, but he pops up with important goals, and I think hopefully with a wee bit of coaching from myself and the staff, that we can progress his game. The result of the weekend is not going to have any reflection on how we approach a game. Is the mindset different from that? Probably not. No, I don't think it is. We're going there to make sure we don't lose the game first and foremost, but within that we want to pose a threat going forward to try and win the game. Now, Rangers at this point are a team in transition. There's been a lot of new players in the building, and I've been in a similar situation myself. It's difficult, it takes time to get your working principles over to the players, but also for the players to adapt to Scottish football. I don't care where you come from, what level of football you come from, and it's been seen all over the world with bigger and better players out with Scotland coming into new environments. It takes time to adapt, and the ferocity, the aggression, the intensity of the Scottish game, it does take players time to adapt. I don't care what country they're coming from. And you can even go down south and look at some of the players that have came from foreign leagues. I remember Ballack came, he was one of a German legend, struggled a wee bit. Varane went to Man United for Parma. There's a multitude of players that you could go on and say how hard it is and how difficult it is to adapt to different environments, and probably being at a bigger club, adaptation's probably a little bit higher because of the demands and expectations that are placed upon you as a player. Team news, have got 2 or 3 struggling with injuries, Brian, coming off the back of the Aberdeen game, to be honest. So we'll re-evaluate them on Friday, but there's 2 or 3 got knocks, challenges in the game. Brucey came off in a stretcher, tells you everything you need to know. And Curtis Guthrie got a bad one in the first half. And Pitt's got bruised ribs. So we'll re-evaluate all 3. Potentially 2 out of 3 might make it, but I wouldn't be surprised if neither or any of them are available, to be honest. Bruce was a cut head, but we thought broken ribs at the time, or cracked ribs. So definitely the cut in the head, but he managed to get the staples in that at the hospital. He was very, very tender to touch, but they sent him home on Saturday night and his mum stayed over with him. And if it got any worse, he was going to get an x-ray. It's calmed down slightly. The head knock's probably not the injury it's going to keep him away from playing football. The head knock's kind of on the side of the head. It's not as if it's a gash over the head or the front of his head.
No concussion?
No, we think he's okay in that respect, done all the concussion protocols, but be honest, I think Saturday's maybe a wee bit too soon for Bruce. It's probably now about trying to balance the book slightly at this end of the season. It's kind of, your budget kind of takes a wee bit of an increase because you're bringing people into the building before you can move people on from the building. So the main part of recruitment now is going to be trying to move players on. There's 2 or 3 players that, if they want to be playing football next year, they probably need to look elsewhere, and they've known about this since May. It's not me being horrible, it's probably a side of the game that no manager enjoys, no player enjoys, but you've got to balance the books, and if you're a football player and you want to go out and you want to play football, you probably need to look elsewhere if you're going to get that game time. And then, all going well, if we manage to do that, it may be freed up a wee bit of money, but it's more about moving 1 or 2 on. If I can make that free, there might be a wee bit of money there to go and try and recruit someone else.